Firstly, we've got Ms. Yasmin Sooka, who is the Executive Director of the Foundation for Human Rights in South Africa. Ms. Yasmin Sooka is known as a strong and formidable human rights lawyer, and she has contributed to the South African and the Sierra Leone Truth and Reconciliation Commissions. This is a candidate the University of Johannesburg feels comfortable to be associated with.
My name's Yasmin Sooka. I'm a human rights lawyer by training, and I've been the executive director of the foundation since 2001. I've also served on South Africa's Truth and Reconciliation Commission and really was responsible there for investigating human rights violations. And as a result of that work, was sent by the United Nations to serve as an international commissioner on the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in Sierra Leone. Of course, since then, I've worked in a number of commissions around the world investigating war crimes. So I was responsible for investigating war crimes in Sri Lanka in the final phase of the war, and in 2015 investigating the French peacekeepers in the Central African Republic who were accused of sexually abusing young children. Currently, I chair the Commission on Human Rights for South Sudan, where my mandate is also to look at the ongoing human rights situation and, in fact, to collect and preserve evidence. In terms of what inspires me to do this work, I think I was really impressed in the South African context that despite what had happened to them, most victims that I interviewed were not really bitter about what had happened to them, but what really drove them was this need to establish the truth about what had happened to loved ones. And that's been an experience that I've had in many, many countries across the world, that people are survivors, and in that quest to survive, they demonstrate extraordinary resilience. And mostly the questions they ask is, why has this happened to me? And so really it's this element of how do we achieve justice for victims that drives me in the pursuit of my work, actually. It's an extraordinary honor to be given this award by UJ. I was very privileged to meet Ellen Kuzwayo when I was a young lawyer working with the churches and the religious community during the negotiations and the transition. And her story of how she had managed to transcend the really painful experiences of not only being born a black woman in a time when it was very difficult to navigate any kind of access to the economy, but also the way in which she overcame the abuse that she suffered at the hands of her husband, finding the courage actually to leave him and in fact to speak about those experiences inspires me. And so the link between who she represents for South Africa, having overcome, I think, a triple challenge, you know, the question of being black, being a woman, and then falling into that vast majority of women in our country who continue to suffer violence and abuse, I think is an extraordinary privilege. And I'm very proud, really, to have been selected by UJ to receive this award. I think UJ is playing an incredible role in transforming social justice relationships in South Africa. You know, while we may have had, I think, a political transition in our country, what we haven't had is an economic transition, and neither have we had, I think, a transition which really looks at this question of how do we realize the values of the freedoms and goals of the Constitution. UJ is playing an extraordinary role in that conversation, and really my message to UJ is to continue this work, continue to find the human beings across South Africa who are able to tell the good stories, because often I think we focus on the negative and we never really think about the fact that every single day there are millions of South Africans who navigate the very difficult terrain we live in, and they continue to make a difference. And that really should be UJ's function. How do you make a difference in the lives of all South Africans, and how do we transcend where we've come from so that in fact we're able to achieve what I call transformative justice in accordance with the Constitution, which is incredibly progressive, but you can't eat it. It's a site of contestation, and you have to make that real for ordinary South Africans.